All right, folks, buckle up. This episode rocks. We've got Kevin Gaither, founder and CRO of Inside Expert, and the guy who literally wrote the book on sales leadership screw ups. KG made thousands of mistakes, but here's the thing, he learns from them. He's here to debunk myths like the idea that you can be buddies with your sales team. Spoiler alert, he says you can't. And he's also got 6 non negotiables for hiring and a take on knowing when to quit that Seth Godin would be proud of. At his core, leadership equals teaching. Get ready for a masterclass in real-world sales leadership. And hey, don't forget to jump into the convo on LinkedIn and hit that subscribe button on the Coach2Scale YouTube channel. Let's go.
Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. I really appreciate about this week's guest is that he's not afraid to say that he's made thousands, not hundreds, thousands of mistakes. And I also love that he attributes those mistakes to the phenomenal success that he's enjoyed over his long career. And after building, fixing, and growing sales teams at 8 startups with 3 key events, including when he was head of sales at ZipRecruiter, he loves sharing these mistakes and lessons learned so that you can avoid the mistakes and see faster success. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Currently, he's the founder and CRO of Inside Expert, and he's the author of It Happened on the Sales Floor, 100 Sensational Stories about Sales Leadership, Screw-Ups, and Big Wins. Kevin Gaither, KG, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on the show. I laugh, but it's like, yep, all those things are true. You know, I screwed up so much and that's why I've been successful.
Well, yeah, it's documented here. Sometimes the old days I grabbed the book off the shelf. Now I grab the Audible and, here it is. It happened on the sales floor. Thanks for keeping me company for many, many hours. I enjoyed the walk down memory lane and also the lessons learned. And I certainly can learn from some of the mistakes that you've made because I made the same ones and I apparently didn't learn from them quickly enough.
Yeah, they're same here. Same here. Whoever said salespeople were smart.
Yeah. My old boss used to say, when someone would come in and use big words in the QBR, he'd say, "Hey, calm down. Were you?" He said this. It was more him than us. He said, "Hey, we're your rich friends. We're not your smart friends." And, so tongue in cheek, we used to laugh at that one.
Right.
All right. So Kevin, you've been doing this a long time. You've had success, as you've said, thousands of mistakes. There's a lot of myths out there. A lot of myths. You've heard it all. What's a myth about coaching and leading salespeople that you believe it's a little bit misguided, maybe it's old, or complete BS?
Yeah, lots of them. And the one that comes to mind, Matt, is that you can be friends with your salespeople. And this is very much of a mistake that first-time managers or relatively inexperienced managers that they make. And they seem to think that if they are friends, and I'm not saying friendly, that's different. I'm saying friends with their salespeople and going out, to drinks with them, maybe double dates, going to concerts, football games, things like that. And they feel like if I develop a friendship with my salespeople, that's going to get me something in return when things are tough or whenever those things might be. And whenever I write this on LinkedIn, by the way, it is a sure go viral post because there's so many people that disagree with me. But I'm here to tell you that there's actually 2 reasons why that's a myth. Being friends with your salespeople is a good idea. That's a myth. 2 reasons. First, you may think that being friends with your salesperson is going to get something for you. Okay. Like you're putting money in the bank, if you will, for when times are tough. But I can assure you that when the salespeople's back that you're friends with, quote unquote, right, when their back is up against the wall, they're going to sell you out. They're going to point the finger at you. They're going to blame you. They're going to cover their butts more than anything else. And now you're wondering, well, what the hell? Why was I friends with this person? Or when you're having, and this is still part of, number one reason why that's bad. Um, uh, the salesperson feels like they should get like, well, hey, we're friends. Like, shouldn't we be treated differently? Shouldn't I get preferential treatment? Like, we're buds, right? Aren't we friends? We're friends, right? And there's this sort of assumption that you're going to, give them deference or preferential treatment or something like that. And all those things are bad. And none of those things end up being true, because if you're a great sales leader, you're going to treat everybody, fairly, not necessarily equally, because everybody deserves to, have sort of a different experience there, but you're going to treat everybody fairly. And there isn't going to be that sort of buddy thing. But the second reason why it's bad and why being friends with your salespeople is an absolute myth is the external viewpoint, which is the worst position that a sales leader can be in. Matt, imagine a world where you and I are friends. You're my boss. I'm the salesperson. Okay. And whether you're treating me on the up and up or not is irrelevant compared to what the 9, 10, 12 other people on the sales team, they're just going to think that. And perception is reality.
Yeah, the
And
optics.
oh yeah. And there is literally no penalty for sales reps to ring the bell and say, Matt is treating Kevin differently than the rest of us. Matt is giving Kevin all the sweet accounts. Matt is letting Kevin do things that other people can't do. And God help you, Matt, if that other person, not you and me, is in some sort of a protected class. Then it becomes the sales leader is discriminating against me because I am fill in the blank with protected class. Okay. And these are all realities, learning lessons that from my own personal experience. And so it is a huge myth. Sorry for beating a dead horse, Matt, but it is a huge, huge myth that as a sales leader, you can be friends with your salespeople. You want anything you want to double click on there or move on?
Well, yeah, yes, I would like to double click on something, but I also just wanted to make the point that, I've been part of that too. I've been friends with my boss, and I probably have been friends with people too. So, if we're going to put that in the mistake category, I'm guilty of that sin, but maybe not. Let me ask you the question. The double click is, where's the line?
Yeah, it's kind of like, what they say, like porn,
You know it when you see it.
Yeah, I can't really define it, but I know it when I see it, I think that when I usually see this when there's a lot of external activities, being conducted. And I'm thinking about this one particular manager who went on a double date with their one of their salespeople and their respective girlfriends. And it's like, why? Like that doesn't make any sense, whatsoever. There's no upside, to that. And so I feel like, if you're going to lunch with your rep, make sure you're not just going to lunch with just that rep, like have a few reps with you. And I can go down a whole nother path of like, boy, going to lunch or dinner with one rep, and then that rep claims that something happened, you're just putting yourself in a bad position there. And again, I'm talking from personal experience and learning where it's like, yeah, just no good. So, it usually manifests itself when there's several of these like outside of work activities. Once in a while, fine. But like regular stuff, there's no upside to that, honestly. And frankly, do I need more friends? I don't think so.
Right. Well, that's, and it's harder when there's a problem that needs to be addressed in that business with that person. There's no hiding from the fact that is more difficult. That it's more difficult to do that. And I'm sure many sales leaders have put their career at a disadvantage by putting themselves in that position because they couldn't take action where they needed to take action.
Yes.
And because perhaps of that closeness, as someone who, spent some time in the Marines, you didn't fraternize, officers and enlisted, there was a huge line. It's because, for that reason, and not that I'm equating sales with the military by any stretch, but, there a lot of organizations have that in place, and that's the reason why they do, right?
And that's the reason why they do it. And you could say that hundreds of years have proven that to be problematic. So like it's the sample size across the US military over hundreds and hundreds of years is probably a really good indicator that leaders shouldn't quote unquote fraternize with their, and of course my question back to you would be like, well, gosh, I'm sure in some Marine manual someplace they defined what fraternize meant, and in no uncertain terms, not unlike anything in the military, I'm sure.
Right. 100%. 100%. So we'll switch gears a little bit. And well, first of all, I appreciate the stance that you take, because I can see why that's not a popular position. And I think when I think through it logically, knowing that I've been on both sides of that, and while I think I did, most of the right things most of the time, I don't know that I 100% agree with you, but I think it's because I've done it. But I certainly can understand why it's a problem. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. I'd love to hear comments about that. I love when people have statements that a lot of people disagree with. That makes it more fun in this business, right?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. And my retort to that always becomes, it never was a problem until it becomes a problem.
That's right.
Yeah. Like, it just takes one time. It just takes one time for you to go out to dinner with somebody and you're like, and the other employees go, oh, wow, I saw so-and-so out with so-and-so. And what does that mean? And then the sweet lead goes to that person and they can ring that bell. So it's like, it's not a matter of like, if it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when. So you just keep playing that game, being friends with your salespeople. And when it bites you in the butt, then you'll come back and agree with me.
Yeah. And I've seen it bite people in the butt that 100% didn't deserve it, but but it happened. So if it's biting people in the butt that don't deserve it, imagine about the people that do deserve it. I always think, KG, about some advice my mother gave me, and I have to clean it up a little bit for our audience here. But basically it's not the person that you're showing attention to that's going to be the problem. It's the person that's not getting the attention.
That's right.
But it's going to come from somewhere. Anyway,
Yeah.
You posted something, a pretty straightforward statement. I think it was entitled "Diamond in the Rough" or something like that. And it basically said, if your salespeople don't have these 6 traits, don't hire them.
Yep.
It said, you didn't say don't, you might want to think about it. It didn't say if they don't have one of these 6 traits or 5 of these 6 traits. It said, if they don't have all 6 of these traits, don't hire them. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. 100%. And I'm ready to rock for sure.
All
I'm passionate about this topic.
All right. Let's, so what say you?
Yeah. So, first, Matt, I feel very strongly that sales leaders do not spend enough time honing their recruiting, interviewing, and hiring process. To me, it's the number one skill, because you can have the best product, the best leads, the best marketing, the best fill in the blanks, culture, compensation plan, fill in the blanks. But if you put the wrong butts in the seat, it's all for naught. And on the flip side, you can have a lot of messed up things in the company, but if you hire really high quality people, it can overcompensate for some of the deficiencies within your company. And so after making tons and tons of hiring mistakes and having to lay people off and fire people and feel really, really guilty about doing that, Matt, I went on a quest and I just read book after book after book that included 6 lie detection books, so that I could get better at identifying high quality talent. And in my career, I've hired inside sales account executives, inside sales account managers, SDRs, BDRs, lead gen qualifiers, enterprise account executives, enterprise account managers, you fill in the blanks with all different types of salespeople. And what I've learned is that a proper hiring benchmark, in other words, the standard against which you measure your candidates that you're trying to hire, you should have somewhere between 8 and 12 different characteristics on that. It can't be infinite and it can't just be 2. So 8 to 12. However, like you said, there are 6 absolute non-negotiables. I don't care if it's going to be an SDR that is right out of college or doesn't even have a college degree, or a very, very experienced, enterprise sales rep whose territory has 10 named accounts in it or something like that. Anywhere and everywhere in between, here are the 6, and I can double click and dive into each one of them after I summarize. First, need for achievement, competitiveness, optimism, coachability, continual learning, and organizational skills. I believe that those 6, through my own experience, are traits that I want to have already in place. These salespeople better have those traits already coming to the table. Okay. Yes. Could you teach organizational skills? Of course you can, but I would rather hire somebody that already has, can keep their stuff together. I'm trying not to swear. Keep their stuff together that already has innate organizational skills. Do you want me to define each one of those?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it, because you can make the mistake, the assumption, oh, I know what that means. But
That's right.
yeah, well, let's do that. A little blurb about each one.
That's right. And let me just tell you that is also a huge mistake that I have made and that other sales leaders make. They come up with these words. Hey, I'm looking for people that are fill in the blank with a trait or an attribute or whatever that might be, but they actually don't spend the time to define it. And when they don't define it, then two hiring managers can look at each other and go, yep, they have that, or they don't have that, but they don't really know what that actually means. So need for achievement. This is somebody has like a burning need to achieve things. They're very ambitious. They're disciplined. They're focused on advancement. They're willing to do things that others will not do in favor of their goals. They set high goals for themselves and they work tirelessly in pursuit of those goals. One of the questions, my absolutely favorite questions that I like to ask to determine if a salesperson has a high need for achievement is, what kinds of sacrifices have you made to be successful? And what you're looking for is substantial past sacrifices for success at work, in their personal lives. People have missed weddings, not their own weddings, but like, hey, there's a family member. I was going to go to the wedding, but then this client called and I had to get on a plane and go there. I was sitting in the auditorium, and my daughter was just about to get on stage for her recital, and the client called, and I had to get up and I had to take the call. And these are, these people, and what's really scary about this, Matt, and this is just on need for achievement. What's really scary about this is that I don't force that on them. I'm not the sales leader saying you must take client calls and you have to blow off a wedding. Like, this isn't me. They come to the table and make these choices themselves. We could talk how dangerous that can be down the line, but I want somebody who comes to the table that has high standards, works tirelessly in pursuit of their goals. The next one is competitiveness. Please, please, please do not think that competitiveness and athletes means the same exact thing. Matt, I have hired Division I, NC2A athletes that couldn't close their way out of a paper bag. So just because somebody is an athlete doesn't necessarily mean that they are competitive. So what does it mean? Competitiveness means like these people are hardwired to be number one. They're always, eyeballing their peers. Okay. Who's ahead of me? Who's behind me? They're always comparing their performance to others. They're out to win. They're born to win. They look at the world in a very competitive way, whether it's in their personal life or in their work life. Everything is a competition. One of my favorite questions to ask there, Matt, is, when was the last time you were competitive? And I know I might have a live wire on my hands. When I get the salesperson, they sort of look up and then they look at me and they go, well, do you mean business or personal? And I go, in my own mind, really? Because there's several situations. They're like, hey, I just, beat somebody into the elevator on the way into this interview. Like, there's personal or business. And then I allow them to tell me the story. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me, personal or business, doesn't matter to. And people that are truly competitive, Matt, have plenty of competitive stories and recent competitive stories. If you start telling me about, when you were competitive 6 months ago playing, FIFA or something like that, I'm like, okay, really? How about last week?
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to go down this road, but I'm not going to, because I have this, I'll make it about me and I don't want to do that. But isn't there with competitiveness? And I'm someone who always really geeked out on the hiring process. So that's why I loved our, initial conversation. We're going to talk about this because
Yeah.
this is where I enjoyed spending time.
Good for you.
And I was the guy that would be asked to interview someone that didn't have a horse in the race, meaning, hey, we need someone else to look at this person. And people knew I actually just liked interviewing.
Same here.
So-
Product people, marketing people, data analysts, they would send me in. Yeah, go. I'm interested.
But the one thing I remember about competitiveness is that that trait, I don't know if it evolves over time. And so people who are just starting their career, it's like you and I just started, we're in new hire training together, and then we get released and, I win, you lose. Like it's almost a zero sum game. But as you mature and evolve, it's about that competitiveness with yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know, I just remember reading that and that made sense to me where I felt like I was competitive to a fault early on. And I've seen a lot of people who are competitive to a fault and they're a detriment to the team. But once, as they mature and as they realize like, no, if you have a team full of internally competitive people, then it really elevates the team. But if everyone's kind of going at each other, it's not always the best dynamic, as much as I'd like to think it would be.
No,
It's not dog eat dog.
No, that's right. Yeah. So there's an ethics component, of course, to this, to where it's like, okay, these people are stealing leads off, off other people's table or, out of the CRM or something like that. Like, that's not cool. Like that's for sure. So yeah, I would agree with you there that there's, I'm saying competitiveness and, competing with each other, but they're just, you could be competing with yourself for sure. I mean, this is why going to play golf by yourself it's like, okay, there's a standard to compete against and it's par and it doesn't have to be with somebody else. So that's the second trait is competitiveness.
I love that you're asking that you have a question that you ask as well. So I appreciate you adding that in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to that end, anybody could go to my site, insidesalesexpert.com and download my free guide, 77 interview questions that has all of these characteristics broken out in about a dozen more that they could utilize.
Excellent. We'll make sure that's in the show notes.
Excellent. So the third one is optimism. You and I would talk about this as like, having thick skin, they've got the body armor to withstand the inevitable rejection of selling. They credit themselves with success, but they don't take defeat, personally. One of my favorite optimism stories is this woman, her name is Alicia Andrade, and she was literally on the other side of the cube from me as I was managing her. And you could tell she got her butt handed to her by a client that hung up on her. And she stood up from her cube with this huge toothy grin. And she looked at me and she went, his loss, and then sat back down again and made another call. And that was it. And it's like, and of course, when I was interviewing her and I assessed her for her optimism, she was like off the charts optimistic. And of course, one of the best questions that I like to ask is, think back to the last time you lost a deal. What did you do to recover from that? And what I'm looking for in that answer is they quickly put the situation in perspective and bounce back by, working on another sale, making another call, getting back to work, basically. And you'd be shocked, or maybe not, given your experience, at some of the stories that I hear. One guy told me one time that he was, when he lost a sale, this customer had insulted him so badly that, and he had not had a smoke in like 6 months, and he went upstairs, had a smoke, came back down again. And I was like, oh, okay, well then what did you do next? Hoping that he would say, just got back on the phone. He's like, nope, it was so troubling. I had to take the rest of the day off. Like, okay. You're not high on optimism there.
KG, one of my business partners has a great story about that would tie back to this. And he would talk about the importance of asking for referrals, right? We all know that's a helpful thing. Money does grow on trees. It grows on referral trees.
Huh.
And the way he learned is that, where he wanted to thicken his skin is he would ask for referrals off the no. So whenever a prospect would say, what, I'm not really interested in this for whatever reason, he had a talk track that would say, hey, totally makes sense. I totally get it. But now that we got a chance to know each other a little bit, you learned a little bit about what I do. Is there anybody in your world, in your network that you think might be open to having a conversation about this? And he talks about the time that one time somebody just, he was having a bad conversation with someone and they hung up on him. And he's like, that's technically a no. But I didn't get a chance to ask for a referral. So he forced himself to pick up the phone and say, hey, I know we got cut off at the end.
Yep.
And then he asked for a referral. Like, I think that would fall into, and he's the most optimistic person that I know. I just thought of that story. It was always a funny story.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. I always, this is another area, Matt, where I believe that, optimism can't be learned. Now you can force people to do things that make them, uncomfortable. Okay. Hey, you must ask for referrals after every single no. And after you get hung up on. But their natural tendency is not to have that thick skin. So it's becomes harder and harder for somebody to be something that they aren't already. And so there's a distinction there. Like, yeah, you can have a sales manager and force you to make more calls and go for the no and all that kind of stuff there. But if it makes your stomach turn every single time you get a no and every single time you get hung up and every single time you lose a deal, it's going to be really mentally draining for you to be successful in sales over the long haul. Yeah, a sales manager can push you to like blip in having higher optimism, but you're really kind of faking it because everybody reverts to the mean. Yeah. Everybody reverts back to their natural state. And then the fourth one, I believe in, like I said, was, organizational skills. This sounds, kind of obvious. And in sales, as you well know, you've got to manage multiple leads, multiple accounts, multiple opportunities at the same time, meetings on your calendar, coaching sessions, pipeline reviews, forecasting. You got to juggle a lot of priorities. And so I'm looking for somebody who already comes to the table that plans, organizes, schedules in an efficient and productive manner. They focus on like key priorities, what's important, what's not important, and puts it in line accordingly, effectively juggles those multiple leads and opportunities, pays appropriate attention to detail, and manages their own personal time really, really well. And so a question that I would like to ask is like, tell me about a time or a situation that required a number of things to be done at the same time. And how did you handle it? And what was the result? And of course, what I'm looking for is that thought process of, okay, I'm going to, write it out or schedule it out. And I'm going to prioritize this being the biggest thing or the most important thing. Maybe I'm going to communicate with, those people that need my attention or my time, to basically like figure out which one is the, earlier deadline and things like that. People and, one of the observations that I have is people that went through college and paid for college themselves by working. Those people I found are unbelievably organized individuals because they had to, they graduated, they performed well enough in school and they were working. And boy, oh boy, it would make me happy if they also were in a club or a sport or some leadership type of thing. It's really amazing when you find people like that. And there's this one woman that used to work for me. Her name is Melissa Mandel, and Melissa, like the busier that she got, the better she performed because she would do such a good job of like compartmentalizing and timing out her day where she would get all her things done. And it was like, oh my God, what a machine. She's super successful and been, at Google, crushing it for a long, long time. So that's organizational skills. The next one that is just an absolute must. And I say this because I don't care if you're super experienced or if you're a first-time salesperson right out of school. Coachable. If you don't believe that you can get better and you're going to take feedback and get better, you're just not going to work with me. Period. End of story. Now,
Right.
maybe other people will undervalue coachability, but I still consider it to be a non-negotiable trait. So they take managers' feedback and immediately implement it. They're open to and they desire constructive criticism. They build feedback mechanisms into their world to minimize those blind spots, and they have a strong desire to improve through feedback from others. And I always like to talk about, there's like two types of salespeople. There's the salesperson where you give them feedback. And like you could literally see the advice or guidance go like in one ear and out the other. And they nod and they go, oh, that sounds good, And then there's the other salesperson where they take it in, they process it, and they go, okay, I'll be right back, KG. And they go do the thing, So here's a good question. It's a behavioral question, of course. Tell me about the last time your manager approached you after you got off a call and gave you constructive criticism. What was the situation and how did it make you feel? And what did you do next? And I love those stories where they're like, oh yeah, I thought that was a good call, but there was areas for improvement. That's a really good, thanks for bringing that up. You'd be shocked that even in an interview situation, I would get salespeople that would say, yeah, it kind of pissed me off that my manager like told me that it was a really good call, or I closed the deal, but my manager still gave me feedback. Like, what's the deal with that? So you have to be a salesperson can't work well with me, regardless of their experience, if they're just not coachable.
So, I'm one of those people, KG, when you talk, like I have a Google search engine right here and I think about what I'm going to say too. And it's not one of my best traits, but it's who I am.
Sure.
But it's good in this format.
Yeah.
So like, I think about coachability, and two things that came to mind. One is when you ask that question, when was the last time your manager gave you some constructive feedback?
Yeah.
And I don't think you'll be surprised by this, but I bet there's a lot of people who are thinking, my manager doesn't give me any feedback. And like, there's a huge dearth of really getting constructive feedback. I was working with one of my friends, kid who's an SDR, and he was like, hey, when your manager listens to your calls, what does he or she say? When they look at your emails, what kind of feedback? He's like, they don't do any of that.
Oh,
but so that's one thing. That's a whole nother problem. That's why I'm in the business that I'm in.
Yes. Yes.
But the second thing is, what if somebody came up to you? Because I'm trying to help someone who might be listening who says, yeah, I don't really recall getting a lot of feedback recently. And so what about when somebody, let's say your manager says, that was great. It's a great call. And you're like, no, that sucked. Like internally, like that call sucked. Like I did a million things wrong. And then that person brings up something with their manager where they feel like, hey, you know what? Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. But this one area, I felt like I totally, screwed it up. Oh yeah. You could have done better here. And that's a huge notch in the coachability category in my world. I just wanted to bounce that one by it.
Oh my God. Yes. Like, please tell me the name of that person. Because that would be somebody I would want on my team. One. Number two, the sales leader, I would be having coaching conversations with them about the fact that they're not, providing that level of coaching. Look, I don't care if you're a super high performer or just an okay performer. Everybody can improve, 1% better a day, 1% better a day. And so, I want to hire the sales leaders that believe in coaching, number one. And number two, I will hold these managers and leaders accountable to coaching. We actually used to do that in Gong. We used to hold, and there was consequences, by the way. I placed, I would name his name, and he wouldn't matter, but I'm not going to do it anyway. There was a manager that was on my team, and we implemented this, coaching construct, if you will, that had consequences if you didn't do it. And he got placed on a performance improvement plan. The manager got placed on a performance improvement plan because he was not doing enough coaching with his salespeople in the way that we prescribed it, because we believed in it so heavily that we wanted to systematize it. Your platform is probably 10 times better than what we were doing, 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, the salesperson, if a salesperson said to me, boy, my manager, if I'm interviewing them and a salesperson said, My manager really didn't often come to me on a call, but I proactively brought a call to my manager and reviewed and forced my manager to review the call and forced my manager. I'd be like, here's your offer letter.
I think my opinion on that is that the manager who's not coaching, being put on a performance plan, is brilliant because their sin is far greater than a rep who's not doing something.
100%.
Because they're that's impacting a whole team of people. They have
100%.
people's careers that in their hands, and if they're if they're derelict in their duties,
Yes.
That's much more of a sin, of a problem than an individual contributor who doesn't update Salesforce or something. Like
100%. Matt, let me, before we get into the sixth non-negotiable trait, let me just give you a bumper sticker for you. Leadership is teaching. Period. If you're not teaching, you're not a leader. Period. End of story. So if you're not, and of course, coaching and teaching aren't exactly the same thing, as you well know, but there is very much a teaching component to coaching, making sure they know what to do and then guiding them on how to do it in a real world scenario or a virtual scenario. Leadership is teaching. And so if you're not a coach and if you're not hiring coachable people, you've got the most what do you call it? Mid team ever. Just,
yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I actually see some companies doing a really good job these days. And an example of that in my mind would be, and I'd be interested in your feedback, is I work with some folks who are going, younger, like I try to help them out and they're going through the interview process and I find out like what type of questions are being asked and what the companies are doing. And I hear a lot these days where someone will do a role play and right after they'll give them some feedback.
Yeah.
And they'll say, okay, do it again.
Yep.
And then they'll give them feedback and they'll say, do it again. And what the hiring team is looking for is, can that person take the feedback? How do they take it? Do they ask a million questions? Do they fight it off? And then the next time around, do they incorporate that into the role play? Can they do it like that? Can they do it and I think that's actually, a really good way to quickly assess. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. I have very, very strong opinions on the demo or the presentation. And I have actually measured the results and the correlation between when I had it in my interview process. Okay, great. And we would score those demos or their presentations against a scorecard, of course. And then we would look back on the scores that they got in the demonstration and try and correlate that to their quota performance, how they did relative to performance. It was all over the place. In other words, it was uncorrelated. So I got rid of it. However, I learned it was my friend Mark Roberge at HubSpot. That's what they do. They do what you are describing, and they're doing it primarily to assess coachability, not your presentation skills right out of the gate,
Right.
not what you know about the company, not what you know about some, detailed, persona that you'd be potentially selling to. It's great. You do the presentation, you screw up. Let's see how coachable you are. And I do think that there is validity in assessing the coachability. That being said, I don't think it replaces, my strong opinion and recommendation is that do not overvalue the demo relative to them telling you real stories about real situations that occurred in the last 30 days with their manager and real sales scenarios there. Because as you probably well know, Matt, everybody's on their best behavior during the interview process. During that, and what I have seen during the demo, and I'm in Los Angeles, so I get a lot of failing actors turning to sales. They can fake it. They can fake it because they're like, oh, I see. I'm being judged on how I can implement the feedback here. Oh, okay, I get the drill. But if that's not their natural state to take feedback and put it into place with several stories that you could tell me, real stories over the last 30 days. So to summarize, I would not overvalue the demo. In fact, I don't like the demo period. But if you go, I'm going to use the demo or the presentation just to assess coachability and maybe technical skills, like do you even know how to use Zoom type of stuff? that's fine, but not this like, well, they didn't know
Yeah.
enough about our company and like
It's
that's BS.
it's not a substitute for behavioral interviewing.
No,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you. Yes, you
yeah.
said it far more crisply than I did. And then the final trait, Matt, is continual learning. This is not the same thing as coachability. This is somebody who is, they're motivated to learn. They demonstrate the ability to acquire understanding and absorb new information. They exhibit continuous learning through reading, seminars, networks, professional organizations. And one of my absolute favorite questions that I love to ask is, besides college and high school, what seminars and other, formal education have you participated in and when? And to me, it doesn't matter what it is. Okay. They could be, a salesperson who's like learning to program, or somebody who took a course on real estate investing or something like that. You're putting money into learning something new, and you're doing it on your own. Another question that I would add in here is like, in the past year, what specifically have you done on your own in order to keep your selling skills sharp? There's a difference between the sales manager saying, here's 10 books you need to ingest, and here's courses I want, you must take. And here's, the John Barrows, seminar that I want you to attend, versus somebody saying, I'm going to spend $199 and go through the Chris Orlob, courses at pclub.io or something like that. There's a huge difference between and a massive chasm between somebody who is proactively learning. One of my best sales managers, his name was Ian Silverstein. Man, this guy he was a sales manager working for me, and he kept me on my toes because he would read book after book. KG, I just read this book. And of course, because I'm so damn competitive, I was like, well, I better read that book too. And we just kept raising the bar for each other because of our continual, learning, and just driving it up and up and up. And especially in a technical sales environment, Matt, somebody who can absorb information quickly and put it into place, which again is not the same thing as coachability, like on their own, they desire new information. They're able to seek it out. That is, you put all those 6 things together: need for achievement, competitiveness, optimism, organizational skills, coachability, and continuous learning. You put all those 6 things together, and you could stop there in most situations. And if that salesperson scores high on all of those characteristics, you'd have a mean mamma jamma on your hand there.
Yeah. And it's not the same. Continuous learning is not the same as coachability.
No.
But is it the same as curiosity, or is it similar to curiosity?
Yeah. I struggle with this one. In fact, I was literally talking to my wife this morning about that one. Like, can curiosity be learned? And I feel like with continual learning, and like it's like 2 overlapping, circles. There's definitely a lot of overlap there. And I'm in this moment, Matt, I'm having a hard time like articulating why I feel those things are different, of course, because I do see these traits in some of the younger salespeople coming out of college, where you hand them a script, great, but they don't know how to peel back the onion because they lack this curiosity. And so I'm not so sure that there's that much of a difference, but it doesn't feel like it's 100% the same thing. There's 2 circles that overlap. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I probably agree that they're not the same thing. I wonder if they're similar enough. For example, like you put a script in front of somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like so I believe strongly that there's a difference between a script and a framework. And if you give me a script, those are your words; they're not my words.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, the script follows a framework. So I want someone who's curious enough to understand, okay, the words don't necessarily matter. Those are your words, but okay, so just now I'll use my words. I'm curious enough to find out what the framework is. And then I'm curious enough to go figure out how to make it my own. So those are 2 curiosity things that lean on the curiosity gene, but they go toward continuous learning.
Yeah.
That's probably the way I would describe it is, or, I used to give my son a hard time when he was young. He was the 10 wise kid. Dad, why? And it's like, but that's helping him now
Yeah.
in his role. And it turns out he's really curious. But when he doesn't get the answer he wants, he goes and finds it. So that's okay. You can always ask why. You can always question something. But unless you're going to go figure it out on your own when you don't get your answers, or talk to 10 people and triangulate, that's curiosity. But it also manifests. It also results in learning. I don't know.
Amen. Absolutely. I was just talking to a founder yesterday who has a platform. It's like one of those AI coaching platforms. And I was talking to him about like, how do you provide the coaching in real time with the salespeople that are on these calls? Because the AI is getting so much better now, and being able to ingest calls and throw back guidance. And his observation, Matt, which is germane to this conversation, his observation was that when the AI or the platform regurgitated like words to read, like a script, the salespeople stopped thinking for themselves. And it was very rote and mechanical and robotic type of conversation. So instead, I'm yes-anding you, by the way. So instead of AI and this platform regurgitating a script of what top performers say, it regurgitates a framework or a pathway. Hey, make sure you mentioned this. So now you can put it in your own words, and you can then continue the conversation the way you would say it. No question about that. So totally agree with you.
So just to put a bow on this, and we'll move to another topic, the 6 non-negotiable traits. I'm going to read them in a different order than you had them, but optimism, organization, coachability, competitiveness, continuous learning, and need for achievement.
Absolutely. 100%.
And I don't know if that's the way I wrote them down in prep for this, but I don't know if yours were in order for a particular reason.
No, although I can say, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due, one of the most material and impactful books that I've ever read in my entire career was Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again. How trite. Okay. Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again by Dr. Chris Croner. He's out of Chicago. Wonderful individual, organizational psychologist, and he studied thousands and thousands of salespeople. And I learned that those 3 traits of need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism are collectively called drive. And of course, every salesperson, you, me, and everybody else out there is going to say, do you want to hire driven salesperson? And you're going to nod like a monkey, of course. But what he did, that I feel was material and impactful, was to flat out observe it, define it, and then be able to assess for that with questions. So giving credit where credit is due, I stole those 3 traits from him and from the book, 15 years ago. And many of the questions that I ask are questions that he recommends in his book. I'm a traveler and a thief, Matt. So, a lot of things aren't necessarily, unique. But need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism grouped together are collectively called drive. It's not that all 6 of those things are in some sort of priority, but those 3 I would bundle together to call drive.
Makes sense. Hey, listen, there's the rule of 3, KG. The rule of 3. The first time you read a book, first time you use somebody's material, you give them credit. Hey, I read this book, and it's from this guy. The second time you do it, you say, hey, I read this in a book. You make vague reference to it. But the third time, it's yours. The third time you own it. That's the rule of 3.
Fair
enough. So kind of segueing to another book here.
Wonderful.
I saw you put something out there, and you referenced a book that's one of the shortest books I've read and had some of the most profound impact. And it was Seth Godin's book, The Dip. You could read it in probably 20 minutes or something like that. I don't recall it being big, but it had a huge impact. I'd made some monstrous, and my world, monstrous decisions over the years based on that book. And the example that I think you had was, what if you worked for this crazy person, this crazy boss, this crazy CEO, someone who demands everything but brings nothing to the table, a crappy situation.
Yeah.
And in summary, the punchline was, spoiler alert, quit.
Yeah.
Get out. There's a lot of people that are in situations that have these traits. They're optimistic, they're organized, they want all, but they're in a bad situation, but they don't feel like they can get it out. They don't feel like they can quit because quitters never win and winners never quit, right? We've been taught that. And what Godin did in that book is he's like, yeah, no, sometimes you really got to get the hell out.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that?
Oh my God, yes. And by the way, to use the parlance of our age, Matt, you're triggering me. You're triggering me. Winners never quit. Talk about that. That would have been like my second myth. Winners never quit and quitters never win. No, that is absolute bullshit. Excuse my language, and you can edit that out if you like.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, by the way, as you're gathering your thought there, like I'm that guy too. Like quitters never win. I'm like, this book sucks, but I gotta keep reading it. Like I can't not finish the book. Like, all right, no, I got grab 54. I don't have a lot of, who knows? Like, not enough time to read crappy books or, whatever.
That's right. Life is too short. Yeah. Life is too short, and I can tell you, when I learned this lesson the first time, I had, the second company that I was at that got acquired, I really felt very confident in my abilities, probably too confident. And I, went to this new company and feeling very, very confident in my abilities, overconfident, honestly. However, this boss was an absolute punk. Like, he was just a jerk. And I put together my 90-day plan, and here's what I'm going to do. And he's like, yeah, no, you're not going to do any of that. You're going to do this. And I was like, well, why'd you hire me in the first place? But then I called my wife and I was like, I may have made the worst decision of my entire career going to work for this person, but you know what? I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick it out. And I started working like 18-hour days where, I was going to make it work come hell or high water. And after 2.5 months of working for this punk, I was just like, I was unhappy. I was exhausted, and I was building the thing that he wanted to be built, but it wasn't the thing that I wanted to be built. And then I realized, why am I doing this? Life is too short. I'm not happy. I'm exhausted. Money's fine, but other things are far more important than that. And there's an important pin that I want to attack on the money side, by the way. And so I just said, you know what, screw it. You know what our parents always used to say to us? Never quit a job without another job. I think that makes sense, except for when you're in this like mentally drained state where you're going to do far more damage to yourself and to your family and your friends.
Yeah.
When you are in just such a beat down state. And those that are listening, and hopefully they're not in this situation, but it's like, you just feel dejected. You get up in the morning and you're like, I'm not happy, and I'm tired from the very get-go. Why am I doing this? Okay. And so I advocate very strong. And I read The Dip while I was at that job, and I read The Dip and I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, and fast forward, Matt, every time that I've quit situations like that, my life and world and success went up exponentially, because I quit the thing that I wasn't doing very well. I learned more about myself and what I didn't like and situations I didn't like. So the very next situation was better. And then if that wasn't good, even though it was better than the previous one, great, quit, move on. I'm not saying like, okay, everybody should have 2.5 month, stints. No, I'm saying like, if you come to this conclusion that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, your boss is an, total a-hole, there's not product market fit, just, and you're exhausted, just quit. You'll be far happier when you quit and you're just relieved. Now, here's the pin. Go ahead.
Well, okay. Yeah. So I got the pin for the money. We'll come there. So you've interviewed thousands of people.
Yes.
What do you say to that person when you're doing your behavioral interviewing? And
yep.
I learned it from, I forget the guy's name, but it was Selecting Winners years ago. And you look, why'd you look at the resume? Why'd you join that company? What'd you learn there?
Yeah.
Why'd you leave that company? And so you say, why you're sitting in front of me with no job? Because people are listening, they're saying, hey, I can't go to a job. Go to a job without having a job. Like,
yep.
Because someone's going to say, why did you leave? And I'm going to say, basically, I quit because blah. And what's the right answer there? What's the answer where you're like, I want to hire this person that quit that job versus, this person's kind of it's like, can't take it. I'm not hiring that person.
Yeah. Amen. Very, very good question. This is where a skilled interviewer, especially a behavioral interviewer, will keep peeling back the onion and tell me a story. Like, tell me why this was such an untenable situation. And I love the salespeople that are like, you know what? I quit. And here's the reasons why. This was my learning lesson. This is what I would do differently. And furthermore, the salespeople that I fall in love with even more during the interview process are the ones that are then taking that learning lesson into a qualifying opportunity for me. They want to then qualify me and make sure that I'm not like that previous boss. I gravitate tremendously from those people. Now, if it's this innocuous or really, we didn't see eye to eye. We didn't see eye to eye, or I got laid off. Now that was it. Well, tell me more about that. What was good? What was bad? If you hadn't gotten laid off, would you still stay with that boss? There's a whole host of peeling back the onion type of questions, Matt, to where I'm trying to assess whether or not this candidate was an absolute disaster and got fired or quit, like rage quit. Okay. Yeah. Or they made a very sensible decision and learned something from that experience that they will take forward. And of course, I want the latter person. I want the person who has said, look, I assessed the situation. I didn't feel like I could be successful. Here's the reasons why. And here's what I'm looking for in my next opportunity. Those are the kind of salespeople where I'm like, great. Thank you. Great answer.
You can tell when there was a bump in the road versus a pattern of bad behavior.
Yes.
In the interviews. So let's, I cut you off a little bit there. So let's go back. There was a money pin.
Well, so when I've published this on LinkedIn, in the past, it could sound like I'm being a little bit tone deaf when I just say, just simply quit. Well, the reality is that there's a lot of people out there that just don't have the financial wherewithal to do that. And so my guidance there is, and this is hard. I'm not saying this is easy. This is hard for many people that aren't able to keep control over their expenses or move to lower cost places. There's a whole bunch of reasons why this is difficult. Putting 6 months away, 6 months of your expenses away. If you don't know how to calculate what your expenses are, that's your first step. Figure out what your 6-month expenses are, your DMV fees, your insurance, whatever those costs may be. And then come up with that number and save towards that number. When you save towards that number, it allows you to make those decisions so you don't feel, trapped in those jobs. And again, I'm just going to say, I recognize that there are a lot of people out there that are their budgets are very, very tight. Single parents, couple of kids, and they're just running on empty, and it's very, very difficult. My guidance is try to do whatever you can to keep putting additional cushion in your bank account so that if or when you're in those types of situations, you can then say, you know what, I quit. It's nearly, some people feel like it's nearly impossible. Yeah. I have never felt that way, even when I was making $10 an hour. But again, it's easier for some, really hard for a lot. And I appreciate that. But being able to quit when you're in a bad situation, there's a big dependency on, well, great. What's your cushion look like? Do you have a significant other that has benefits in a job? Do you have money in the savings, account? Things like that, low expenses.
It also goes back probably to an optimistic person who's got confidence in his or herself to be able to weather the storm versus someone who is not optimistic, is a little bit more, less confident and feels like they can't do it. Right. And look, there are real issues out there and we're both acknowledging that, but yeah, it's hard to put a price on your sanity.
Yeah.
And your well-being.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah,
the
easy for me to say.
That's right. The quote, the quote, it's actually from a song, I believe. It's future's uncertain, but certainly bright. That's how an optimistic person thinks about this. A future uncertain, but certainly bright.
I'm doing all right. I'm getting kind of good grades. My future's so bright, I got to wear shades.
Yeah. Isn't that it's by X or something like that? Or
I don't know.
How'd you know that?
I remember, some stupid stuff. I remember a lot of stupid stuff. That's
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
I can
enough.
go on.
We'll call you Cliff Clavin.
Exactly. So, what are you doing these days? Right. Inside expert.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What is it? What do you do? And what do you love about it?
I appreciate that. So my entire career, I've always just I've loved helping people out. And I've made an absolute mint helping people out, literally with no expectation of anything, in return. And after our third successful liquidity event, I decided that I would just put out my own shingle and become a coach, an advisor, consultant, whatever. And I would focus on helping leaders at early stage pre-IPO tech companies avoid all of the galactically ridiculous mistakes that I have made over my 30-year sales and sales leadership career, when going about building, fixing, and growing sales teams at these pre-IPO tech companies. And so primarily I'm focused on coaching and advising for CEOs, founders, and heads of sales, as they're starting to grow their team. And look, Matt, I know what they're going to go to next. I know what's around the corner, and I know the mistakes that I made, and I'm going to help them avoid those mistakes. And frankly, when you're building a sales team like that, those mistakes can cost you millions. And so my goal is to help these people avoid making those mistakes that are going to cost them millions and millions of dollars, because I know what's going to happen next.
Well, I interviewed a really smart person a while back, CEO of Gong, and he said, yeah, we were talking about mistakes, and he said something that I didn't 100% agree with at the time, because I didn't really understand what he was getting at. And I said, yeah, but isn't it okay to fail? Isn't it, kind of learn from your mistakes? He's like, yeah. He's like, I get that. But he's like, but I'd much rather hire the person that learns from other people's mistakes. And I'm like, all right, I like that.
Yeah.
Touche. So, and so you mentioned that you have these, 77 interview questions, and we're going to put that in the show notes, but you offer a lot of stuff up there, like you said, without expecting anything back in return. If people want to get access to, stuff content you've put out there, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. One of the best ways to just start sampling all the content that I use, just find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Gaither. At Kevin Gaither, I publish 2 times a day, 5 days a week. And, obviously all that content is free, and it's, these are real stories from real experience. It's not just, some sales leader that became a sales leader 5 years ago and thinks they know everything, and so that's the easiest way. Of course, the other way is go to insidesalesexpert.com. That's insidesalesexpert.com. And I've got a whole slew of guides, 10, 12 different free sales leadership guides, from my interview guide to coaching to how to know if your VP of sales is going to make it in 30 days or not. And everywhere in between. And I have a blog with 300, 400 blog posts on there too that you can check out there. So, but most people would probably enjoy simply going to LinkedIn and hitting that little like and subscribe and follow button, and reading my content twice daily.
There we go. Awesome. Putting it out there for the world to see.
Yes.
So last question as we close out here, KG, we're the Coach2Scale podcast. We care about coaching and developing people and helping others achieve success and achieving success through others. And we try to bring guests like yourself on, people who care about this stuff and, aren't just in it for themselves.
Yeah.
But people that are wired the way you are, usually had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. And, they took a cue from someone, they got coaching from someone. It might've been a punch in the face, a jab, between the eyes, but they learned it somewhere. Who's somebody whose coaching and influence has had an impact on who you are and how you approach things today?
Yeah, there's 2 that immediately come to mind. First is my grandma. I don't even know. She never told me how old she was. I guess, you never ask a woman how old she is. Anyway, she would, constantly teach me. I'd be 10 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old. And she'd be teaching me things about, finance and life. And she was constantly coaching and constantly teaching, me, but she also did it with an incredible amount of empathy. Even though she was a very logical, individual, thought a lot more through her head than through her heart. She also was, teaching me by example, how to coach with empathy. I'm a 13-year-old screw up, and she's guiding me there. And so she has had one of the most, biggest impact on my life. And I would say then after that, my my first sales manager who gave me a shot in sales. His name is Guy Klingler. He took a chance on me. I had no sales experience, degree in architecture and no sales experience. And he gave me a shot and he showed me what hard work was. He emulated how to sell. And honestly, there was a lot of things that he did that are no-nos that I learned like not to do.
Sure.
And that's just as impactful, Matt. But it was like, it's sort of like the baby comes out of the womb and is immediately attached to mom, like I was birthed into sales and he was my first sales manager. And so there was a lot to learn from him, both good and bad, more good than bad. That's for sure. So I would say those two people, lots of good to be learned and certainly some things that are, what not to do these days.
Well, I think it's good that you can say that there's this great person who had an impact on you that you think highly of, that taught you not just what to do, but also what not to do. I mean, that's a human being, right? I mean, it's, I'm sure I'd like to think that, I'm a good father and I'm sure I taught my kids a lot of things that they should do, but I'm sure they're thinking, yeah, there's a couple of things I wouldn't do, Dad.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah. And hopefully they have the confidence and the wherewithal to go, to go their own way. And I actually, Guy is in one of the acknowledgements in my book, I for sure as he should be.
And when you hear the word coach, what's the favorite coach that comes to mind? A name maybe most people would know. Like a more like
Bill Walsh. Are you kidding me? I'm a diehard Niner fan, man. Are you kidding me? Like, here you go. Hopefully this is on video.
All right.
Yeah, Bill
didn't quite live up to expectations this year, but there's always next year.
There's always next year, but yeah, Bill Walsh, just this quintessential coach and he held super high standards for his sales team and paid a lot of, I just read his book last year, by the way. The Score takes care of itself. And it's just, just an absolute, lesson in coaching and teaching and all the things that go into leadership. And I have to say, just like you were saying before, I don't 100% agree with everything that he wrote, in the book, but that's fine. I'm a traveler and a thief. I'll take a look, the things that I think will apply to my world and my leadership, and discard the rest.
Well, that's great. I think that's a really great place to leave it. KG, I really appreciate the energy, the enthusiasm, and the perspective that you brought to our conversation today.
My pleasure. Happy to help. And I would love to be on again sometime if you'd have me.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, right? The 6, non-negotiable traits, the myth that you can't be friends with you can be friends with your salespeople, as a myth. And then, basically the importance of consistency and when quitting is okay. So, all great stuff. And thanks for doing that. And thanks for everybody out there watching and listening. If you're out there, let us know you're out there. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Let us know what you'd add on to it. Let us know what you'd like to see more of. We want to bring content to you that's going to help you do that really tough job that you're doing every day. We want to help you do it just a little bit easier. So until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.